Thank you for having me. Thanks to DevOps Barcelona and to InnoIT for hosting us. This is great. It's, I think, my second time speaking in a DevOps Barcelona event. And this came a bit as a surprise last minute because there was a change of speakers. So apologies in advance. I will not be able to stay later on in the mingle. But you can reach out to me if you're interested in chatting more about the content, or any other feedback is welcome. So let's start out. Someone said that you said that I was going to speak about AI. Yeah, I will speak about AI, but I was going to try not to say the word AI a single time, but I've already broken that, so sorry. I don't know how much you're riding the wave and the hype of this whole thing, but I tend to hate hypes, and I tend to hate like miracle solutions to all the possible problems. But I think one of the important things to do when there's a new trend in the industry is try to evaluate and like experience it firsthand to see what merit it has. So I'm going to try to continue cultivating a bit the Dr. Jekyll personality I have. So when I talk to technologists, I try to speak about not tech. I will try to speak more about industry and so on. And when I talk to non-tech people, I try to speak about technology. And let's see how this works. Is anyone here relating to this, or is anyone here experiencing this firsthand? Something I've been hearing a lot when I advise companies lately. Many people are seeing not only the current wave as a threat for their professions or as a big transformational change for their professions. Some people who are not very acquainted with those professions, with some of the technical professions, are oversimplifying the life of perhaps an engineer, I would say, and are trying to sell the argument that in the future we might not need engineering as we see it, as we understand it today. And I think that that's partially true, but that's not very different than other transformations we've undergone in the, let's say, over the last 25 years, like with the arrival of cloud computing, mobile devices. All these kind of things have actually not changed our discipline. It just made it mutate and grow a lot. And I think we need to embrace what's happening now as an opportunity to try to understand where we can benefit from and which things have merit and not merit. One important thing that is happening now, I think we still are suffering from a huge amount of people who are retired from the blockchain bubble, that blockchain was going to solve everything in the planet, right? So now they are overselling again something that might be okay, but they are focusing mostly on the solution rather than on the problem that those solutions are tailored for, which is one of the diseases of our industry, in my opinion. Anyways, I want to take an optimist spin to what's coming and try to share with you the stories I'm experiencing. So first of all, let me talk a bit about myself. I've been doing technology professionally for over 25 years now. My first years, I started a small company in the middle of the dot-com burst, which was going to end our professions at that time, according to many. Well, it didn't, and it gave us some food for a few years to Albert, my business partner, and me. It was a small ISP that tried to deploy internet in companies in a situation where like not even DSL connections were available to them. So we learn a lot about that. So in several periods in my career, I've been going like from being very hands-on, which is perhaps what I love doing the most, to working more on technology strategy. So one of the things I did for approximately 14 years was working at Spotify in a moment where I joined when Spotify was hardly known in many countries. We had not launched in the US, nothing like that. And I was in charge of starting the SRE team. My team, when I arrived there, was like 4 people, and when I left was a few hundred. So after all that experience, I decided, or I promised myself, that I would never do any big thing again in my entire career, and I'm trying to stay true to that promise. So I've currently founded Alltuner Labs. I'm the CEO, and E doesn't stand for executive, it stands for everything. So I'm doing everything in that company. It's a small consultancy company. I make a living out of advising some companies and like helping them not fall in some of the multiple pitfalls I've experienced in my career. And I'm also building a few products. That's the end game. I don't want to advise companies either for a living, but that's like what I need to do for now. So I'm building a couple of products, CastTuner and DevTuner, alongside some people I really trust. Another thing I do, as I said, I advise some startups and so on through Segways, which is a Catalan small venture capital company. I got acquainted to the life of startups, but from an investment perspective. And I realized that many startups are like following the trends that they've happened to read on Hacker News and all these kind of things. So I try to help them also scale and grow a bit rationally. So all in all, in the last 15 years before Alltuner, I've not been very hands-on. I've been very involved with technology in many occasions, but I've not been very hands-on. And I was really missing it, I discovered. Now I code like 8 hours a day if I can, and that's making me like thrive again. So last time I coded, it was a very different world. Today, more or less, I picked, or actually AI picked 5 topics out of like 10 things I wanted to cover about how to think about the future and a few things that might be transformed and a few things that I consider are important to stay current in our professions. So, and yeah, they cover technical aspects. This will not be a technical talk, so sorry if you were expecting that, but I will talk about some of the up and coming technologies, I would say. And also some more like human aspects around talent, recruitment, hiring, and staying up to date with your careers. So first, let's talk a little bit about the current development landscape. I would say the cycles in our sector are something that constantly repeat, as you might have experienced if you've been around in technology for more than 5 or 10 years. I think we are seeing another iteration of one of these cycles around how software is built. This time it has incorporated more naturally thanks to very good tools around software development, like all the GitHub ecosystem and all these things that we take for granted nowadays that have become commodity, and all the augmented aspects of those things like code generation or like documentation, like up-to-date documentation, or boilerplate reduction and so on. So I think we're going from a cycle where like the idea creation or like the initial step of any iteration process in software, well, starts with a conversation, I would say. Conversation, that's not very different to what it used to be back in the days. Maybe we didn't talk to a machine, but we talked to our colleagues to do things nicely or to decide what to do next. I think it starts with a conversation. And there's a particular thing that is happening currently, which is very interesting, which is these conversational agents are good at helping us fight the blank page syndrome. So what do I do first, or how do I get started with this? I'm a big proponent of being very strict in lifecycle management of products and lifecycle management of software in general. I think this is the step that I was mentioning in my second slide that some people are missing, which is this is a conversation starter. This is like a starting point. This is something that helps us in the very early stage of conceiving an idea. But it's by no means the end result. There's many things that need to continue happening: evaluation, testing, monitoring, observation, deciding what to do next, deciding what not to do next. And you might have realized that a lot of the tools that we have at our disposal nowadays are very good at adding things, at creating fluff, and at adding. But they are never very good at helping us remove things or getting rid of things. This is one, and I don't want to spoil the future slides, but this is one of the main points that make me think that senior technologists will have a job for the foreseeable future, and perhaps an even more important one. So if we compare a bit automated tools and human behaviors, I think automated tools, aside from what I mentioned around fighting the blank page syndrome, they're very good at some things that tend to be quite tedious for us, or tend to generate a lot of repetitive waste, in the sense that things that we do slightly different every single time, things that need to be done to bootstrap your next idea. So they are good at generating boilerplate code. They are good at solving very well constrained defined problems, at suggesting some optimizations, and like, I don't know, commanding code, or like helping you type your data classes, and all these kind of things. They're very good at this. They are also very good at making you feel good about life and about what you are producing. And they are not very modest. Potentially, you can see some of the biases in the kind of training data that they have been using, perhaps, in those tools. We are humans. We are still good at what has made us survive for many years in this planet, which is innovating, not resting on the laurels, trying to invent new solutions, imagining things are possible. Probably that's going to be even more our role moving forward, and perhaps with a little bit less of boilerplate. We'll see some pitfalls on this later. I think the new workflow, and new, it's quote unquote, because I just added some robot emojis there, will be not very different than what we've been doing for ages, but some of the most tedious parts, or some of the perhaps less value-adding parts, we will get aided by external actors. In the same way that we love to get help from our colleagues, but they are not always at our disposal, or we cannot disturb them all the time when we need something from them. Second aspect I want to cover is technical debt. Starting to build on towards the idea that our profession might be mutating. So legacy and technical debt, who hasn't complained about that? Always. I think technical debt is just a product of writing code, or writing software, or having ideas. And I don't like to speak about technical debt as a bad thing. I see it as a great opportunity. Ideas flourish, or like software improves as a result of things that you're not very happy with in the past, or things that you have inherited and that you don't have much control over. We've seen, if you've been around for a while, you've seen this happening many times. We are inheriting code bases that are sometimes like even 30 or 40 years old, and those things have created like gigantic maintenance and operations tasks. I think it's no different now. The problem is that we have like some of these external agents building like thousands and thousands and thousands of lines of code in a fraction of the time that we used to do it. But that code that they are building, not because they are bad, because they are not great in some aspects perhaps, but that code will also become technical debt, especially code that is built a bit like a la Frankenstein. Like I take one piece from here, take that piece from here, all in a sudden consistency goes down the drain. So technical debt will continue existing. And I think obviously that will allow us to continue having a job, as I said. but it opens up for a very explicit opportunity to work on something that, when we've done well in the past, has been always beneficial for the future, which is, well, what I like to call conventions, standard ways of doing things. Building those strong conventions will also help external agents and our colleagues as well to do a better job at building software and at improving software, at maintaining software. This graph comes from the, how's it called, Octover's report from GitHub. This is only in public repos, so non-private ones, like the amount of projects that have been aided by generative AI, it's exploding. And I'm fairly sure that if we saw 2025, this line would be disappearing from the image. It would be a true hockey stick. Not all that code is good, and we try to build, or perhaps we have a lot of bloated software. Plus, remember, now we have the CEOs writing code. They think that they are coders, right? So that's potentially true, but maintainability is not one of the dimensions that is taken into consideration by those people or by code generating software. So if you've been playing around with large language models, you have already discovered that context windows, and like in general context for prompts and things like that is the most important thing. And when context is very diluted, unfocused, or long, you basically start over, or you basically start like suffering from limitations in the understanding of the task at hand. There seems to be obviously an increasing performance in the quality of the large language models, and I think we are still seeing only the tip of the iceberg in some dimensions. But I certainly believe that there will always be a limitation around context, perhaps much bigger, but there will always be a limitation about context. So I believe that doing everything that is in our hands to clarify that context, or to remove some of the topics that those language models need to care about from their plate as early as possible in the software conception process, will be crucial. If not, they will continue wasting a lot of their effort in reinventing wheels. Try slightly different prompts to bootstrap doesn't matter, something simple, like a simple Python project with, I don't know, typing, observability, and things like that. Try minor changes there. Even with low temperature settings, or whatever that means, you're never gonna get the same choice of tools, the same choice of frameworks, the same choice of how to modularize your project, how to make it grow, how to make it shrink. So let's try to put those agents in a situation. I also promised myself that I would not say the word agents, but doesn't matter, I said it. Let's put those machines in a situation where they don't have the opportunity to reinvent a lot of wheels. And that ties a bit into what I was talking about conventions before. Who can here, except for Ignacy, identify what this is? Correct. So this comes from the Zen of Python, and I believe the Zen of Python is a good manifesto on things we can do in the software industry to make software evolve in a sane way, and also to reduce fragmentation and to move it in a direction that aids software development. And I think it could serve a bit as an inspiration, or it's unconsciously served as an inspiration, not this particular, but these ideas, in the way that some of the frameworks and conventions have been developed over time. So stronger conventions to the rescue. I don't want to talk about conventions as something new. On the contrary, we should not create more terms. We should have less terms, perhaps. But for me, what I refer to as conventions is packaging, is how we create artifacts. APIs are conventions, like protocols, frameworks, primitives around auto-scalability, like all the ecosystems around orchestration, all of those things are frameworks. In 2010, it was still very common that every company that had to do some sort of service-to-service communication processes, things like that, would have to reinvent 1,000 wheels around service discovery, around observability, around like how to auto-scale, how to deploy, how to increase capacity, how to, I don't know, do A/B testing on those things. Many of those things become commoditized over time. And while we might not agree with some of the implementations of those conventions, I certainly do not, but there's like a well understood or a well accepted practice on what are good patterns at work. I think that that's something we should continue doing, and we should double down on that. And perhaps, given that the initial phase of software conception around like creating like the scaffolding of projects, or creating like the boilerplate on how to bootstrap something, given that that part will be more automated and less human-centric, perhaps that will take us in a direction where like frameworks will oversimplify or will be very machine-centric. I think we need to minimize choices, but every time I say this, I say it with like I want you to take it with a grain of salt. I think choices and chaos to some extent have been crucial for making our industry evolve. So we need to do this in a controlled fashion. And if standards are, or conventions again, are strong, we might have less reasons to distract ourselves from actually solving a problem that we have at hand. But yes, we do like to tamper around with things, and we like to try things, and we like to go a bit crazy when we write software and when we create things in life. That's a fact of our profession and our nature as humans. I think, as I hinted before, we need to look at this in this bidimensional diagram around innovation and standardization. I would say the dream scenario, the one that every leader, whatever that means, would want, is to be up on the right-hand side, I would say. But to get there, there's a lot of things you need to do in the way you work, in culture, things like that. I think most of the good ideas happen perhaps there, when you have a lot of frustrations as a result of like poorly standardized systems or like poorly designed software and things like that. And if all the software moves in the direction of just standards, no innovation, we miss out on opportunities to create the next new good software for the future. So I think we need to do this very, very carefully, so we don't lose our ability to innovate. This also means that we as technologists should be fighting the urge that many people will have in our profession to minimize chaos or to minimize risk taking. Otherwise, we might become like the stack technologists of the future. And then there will be a new wave of people embracing a very different way of working. By the way, all of this comes from my crystal ball and usually doesn't work, but let's see this time. So speaking about conventions, I think zooming in, one specific aspect I want to talk about conventions is APIs. This is an extremely simplified, far from reality timeline of what an API or what the world of APIs or the world of like service-to-service communication, RPCs, all these kind of things, extremely simplified. In the 2000s, most of the service-to-service communication tools or like platforms and so on were mostly constrained to a single product. There were things that you were doing to communicate with the software that the team sitting next to you had built, or like the software that some other team built like 10 years ago, 20 years ago sometimes. So it was mostly around like how do we codify contracts in software communication in a bit of a formal manner. And there were a few horrible standards born as a result of that, and some, even the horrible ones, were coming from hard-learned lessons, I would say. So we should not dismiss them as useless. They cemented what the future of software communication would be. Then 2010 happened. 2010, so I don't know, something like this. There was that time where we are now, basically still, there's not a single service that wants to provide software as a service that doesn't have an API, and now APIs were no longer constrained to within your premises, and it became like a thing that you needed to expose to the world with the hopes of generating for some companies some new revenue streams, or like to deepen integrations with third parties, all these kind of things. And that's been a major success of the internet as we know it. There's most of the services we love and we use every day, they have APIs, REST APIs, or some sort of APIs to interact with. Then there's like a bit of a trend where those things need to be a bit standardized, or like fix some of the limitations of the way we've been doing APIs, and there was some standardization coming that way, like from the client or peering side. The GraphQL might be an example, but also like from a formalization standpoint, like gRPC, protobuf, all these kind of things came up to solve problems that were real in the way that we've been using APIs, or after incorporating some of our learnings. I think, again, context is king, and I'm going to go back a bit to talking about the new model of interaction between tools. I think this graph will soon be augmented with one more player. Have you heard about MCP? Well, it might be yesterday's news, because as I was coming here, I read that Google has announced their own MCP style thingy called A2A, agent to agent. So the whole idea is, since LLMs will always have limitations on how much context they can retrieve from their knowledge base, and since we will be in a situation where models cannot grow ad eternum and they will need to be more specialized or limited and so on, one thing that is working surprisingly well is giving those models like a bit of tools to be a bit more autonomous in augmenting real time the context of what they know in order to perform certain actions. Crystal ball again, in the same way that there's no service in 2025 that doesn't have a public API, service that we use normally that have public API, I think that's going to be a joke compared to what we're going to see with MCP or whatever wins that battle. Like, we are seeing MCP being integrated in browsers, in Postgres, in programming languages directly, in everything. And this is a very interesting aspect, because it's what's going to make those LLMs appear a bit smarter, because they will have like real-time access to information and real-time access to executing actions on our behalf. As with all APIs, and even more in the case of an API that is based, or like a language that is based on very textual format and so on, we're going to bump into a lot of issues with that. We don't know what happens with data validation, formatting, exchange of information, and so on. I think, in a nutshell, basically MCP is like this kind of protocol, I would call it, perhaps, where you expose something from your software. I insist, browser, something like that. A very good case could be like if you've been doing like testing on browsers, like something like Selenium. Imagine Selenium, but augmented in a way that the LLM can see what's happening with what the mistakes it's creating. An example. Function calling, like doing things on the behalf of an LLM, perhaps standardized formats, and it's by design a very simple protocol. And one thing has happened that is very interesting, and I believe that that's the reason why Google might have rushed launching the A2A protocol, which is this standard that was developed by Anthropic has been adopted already by Microsoft in GitHub and GitHub Copilot, and has been already adopted by OpenAI. And it's obviously open standard, so you can play with it as well, not only for LLM data retrieval processes. So the fact that so many players have agreed from the get-go on a way of doing things here might show that the industry has like momentum that will make this wave the winning one, perhaps. But the S in MCP is for security, which means that we're going to have a lot of issues, right? You know, all these supply chain issues that we're seeing with crazy dependencies being installed or software dependent on without control or without version pinning, things like that, that's going to seem like a joke compared to what this opens. People are opening up their browsers to tools that are running on someone else's server. People are opening up their prompts, their shell, their SSH connection, their database. Not a joke. This is happening already today. There's already incidents being happened, like, oh, the LLM went crazy and my Postgres database went dead. This is happening today already. The incidents we've been seeing with supply chain security in the last few years, like Heartbleeds, Log4j, all these kind of things are going to seem like a joke compared to this interconnected work, which means that this convention will need to improve and be. We're going to go back, ironically, to a more like gated access to APIs and endpoints, I believe. All right, enough about MCP. Tech interviews. Wanted to talk a bit about tech interviews with very uncontroversial news. All right. Yep, sorry about that. So it's not a secret that the way we've been doing interviews will not cut it for the future. But as you know, this is old news, even without AI or LLM and so on. In my career, there's very few people of those that have been incredibly amazing that would give me very different signals than others following the standard interviewing accepted practices. People tend to surprise you positively and negatively. In this future where not only people can be actually coding or showing what's been showed by a computer to them while taking an interview, in a future where people will be sitting in their desks and the last thing that they will ever do is to invert a binary tree, we really need to think very hard, because we will be hiring people that will need to have different set of skills, or we want to probe for different set of skills. And communication and explaining problems correctly and like collaboration and so on will be crucial. Even if tomorrow AI was going to disappear or LLMs would no longer exist, that statement would be still true. So a saner interview process, again, I don't know. You want to gauge how people are going to react to some situations, how they tackle problem solving, how they do system design, how do they assess existing code bases. Remember when we were talking about technical debt? Well, that's going to be the bread and butter of our future. And also, most importantly, perhaps the last point is the most crucial one for me, is how resourceful a person is. Is that person going to be stuck, or is that person going to be able to find creative solutions to a given problem? But again, this is old news. All these things would be valid regardless. But we seem to not have understood this correctly. And I think now we have an extra pressure on our industry that probably will affect also recruitment industries and other industries, that will make this even more evident, because the correlation between doing a good interview and being good at your job will be even more orthogonal, I would say. The reality, and that's a bit of an elephant in the room, is I think a lot about this myself. Like, would I be able to start today, to go back to like who I was in year 1999 and join this wave, ride this wave? And in many situations, I think, yes, I would, because I've been always okay with change or with uncertainty or with dealing with imperfection, and I've considered myself like, I don't know, a good gardener that tries to leave things a bit better than when you enter the place, something like that. And those are traits that will continue being necessary. But perhaps the prototypical software engineer, junior software engineer that needs like a lot of guidance to get started will have to evolve a lot. We need more resourceful people. But I said that this was an optimistic talk, and I think that this is a great opportunity. Why? Well, I think software engineering would be more about engineering, would be more about like finding solutions to problems, right? I like to I think this comes from Albert. I like those people who can do electronics and are very resourceful. Like, I don't know, this circuit is not working. Maybe if we just scratch a bit this resistor, it might work, right? These people exist, and these people can still do things nowadays, even if the world is very digital in some aspects. I've heard that there's a new wave of talent coming, like teenagers and younger people and so on, that all of them want to be creators of things and makers of things and content creators and so on. Well, I think that that's a bit what software will be. Like, will be like being resourceful with building blocks, I would say. And I think all the skills that are basically replicating existing patterns will be devalued, and all the skills that are connected with unique skills or like something you can do a bit different than others and so on will increase in value. Differentiation will happen in our industry, and it will be very good to be a generalist that has some superpowers. And I think that this is something that I would hope our education system can adapt to, because we can no longer be training people to follow exactly the by-the-book recipes to solving a problem. This, again, I think it's still true, even if LLMs and AI and all these things would not exist. But I think it will become more evident now as well. I personally don't fear the change, because cloud, we survived cloud. Like, how many sysadmins I had like this? Like, I met a bunch of extremely senior sysadmins working for extremely big companies that when cloud was arriving would tell me, oh, this is ending our jobs. Like, seriously? Seriously? We survived that. everything has changed. The internet, I don't know, personal computing earlier on, mobile devices, all those things. And those graphs that I've shown before continue growing. Also, bonus point I think one thing that we need to do as technologists is embrace that we are going to have people coming from very different backgrounds like entering our world. Aside from the CEO that wants to be a vibe coder and wants to do their things with LLMs and so on, I think there will be many people that will join technology teams and so on. And I think, for instance, an example of that is like good product people, I would say, will be excellent given we build the right conventions and abstraction layers in the way we build software, as an example. I was saying graphs trending up. This is a bit dated, I would say. This is from GitHub Trends 2018, I think. This is growth in contributors. Sorry, I could not find an aggregated one, but you get the idea, right? So this graph was certainly promising in 2018, but it has not stopped. This is not contributors, this is contributions, and in public repos, but continued after 2018, and it's growing up and up and up and up. We will not have a shortage of problems to address as technologists. So lots to do on conventions, but one specific thing I want to call out as bright future, and especially for us who are System C people, we've seen a transformation in the way we do real-time software. Real-time software, what do I mean by real-time software? I mean, we've been optimizing for years in the way that microservices talk to each other real-time, expecting an answer now, or like we've been optimizing for years for the case of auto-scaling or capacity planning or being able to accommodate the growth of this particular hour of the day. We've built a lot of primitives around that in the way we've written software. We have forgotten of something that always comes back, the cycle between real-time and batch computing. And I think now we are seeing one of those transformations once more. A lot of the software that powers some of the large language models and big machine learning models and data pipelines and so on is software that no longer can work real time for several reasons, for compute requirements, and also perhaps most importantly because the information will not be retrievable in real time, even if we had like infinite capacity, networking capacity and things like that. And us, who have been acquainted to all the challenges of building scalable systems optimized for the real time, have a lot to bring to the table on the batch world. And anecdotal evidence of this is the huge amount of critical AI software that is still running on Jupyter notebooks. It's kind of the Excel of machine learning, so to say. Nothing against Jupyter notebooks, I use them all the time, but this is real. This is not productized in a way that is repeatable, redeployable, rerunnable, idempotent. All these kind of things are not traits of the way we've been building like batch software. And I think we've seen a lot of those things happening in our industry, and we've been adapting to that. And now we have like more or less well-accepted ways of deploying artifacts and scaling artifacts and like separating configuration from data, all these kind of things. I think all of that needs to happen in that other world. It's still quite common that some of the big open source, probably also happens in the closed source projects, but big open source software used for like doing, I don't know, speech recognition, things like that. All in a sudden, some random person opens a pull request for that project and says, by the way, I fixed this memory allocation thingy that is, and all in a sudden, like Whisper goes twice as fast. there's a lot of technical debt accumulated in the way we've been doing ML and AI and so on. I think we have a lot to bring to that table, but that requires us to try to understand that world. And I think there's something playing against that, which is cloud providers. Cloud providers, it's all about real time. The traditional cloud providers, I would say. Where they make a lot of money is in the higher margin services that they have, like for higher order primitives, like Kubernetes, hosted, these kind of things. And cloud providers are trendsetters in the way we build technology. And since they are very distracted on trying to make their business profitable, they are ignoring some of the realities of new software development. And I think there's a few providers, a few companies that are really seeing this and understanding this. I've listed a few. I think Cloudflare is one of them, where they will take a more developer-centric spin and like they will think more about like all the use cases, not only like the, I don't know, client request response, traditional real-time model that we've been seeing. Again, I forgot to put the crystal ball icon here, but anyways, that's all I wanted to talk today. I don't know if I've gone over time, but I'm happy to open a conversation if you have any comments. In case you need a conversation starter. They're written here. I don't particularly think they are true, those statements. I just wanted to provoke some thought. And if you want to reach out, this is what I am. Thank you.
I'm Marco. I'm the co-founder here at Pulpo. And over the last year, I've been very close to many different engineering teams, over 50 different companies from here, from, I don't know, maybe Wetaka, Playtomic, Exotica, and also in other parts of the world. And I've been extremely focused specifically in the code review process, but also analyzing other parts of the software the delivery process. So before that, I was working in a startup here in Barcelona, where we had a great team. But even though we have a great team here, we somehow didn't manage to consistently ship good code fast. We kind of ship bad code and quite slowly. And after analyzing what was happening, much of the problems that we have there in that company have had a lot to do with code reviews. Code reviews are super important. They have like a lot of impact in many different things. First of all, when we think about code reviews, probably the first thing that comes to our mind is quality, right? Maybe I can do this a little bit bigger. So the first thing that comes to our mind is quality. And now that 50% of the code that we are generating is AI generated, so this aspect comes, is a little bit more relevant, right? And then there is the thing that what we consider quality in software engineering, and we will talk about that later. So another thing that has a lot of impact, code reviews have a lot of impact there, is the culture. So if we think about code reviews, we are giving feedback, right? It's a process that happens maybe multiple times every day, and we are giving and receiving feedback on our own creation that can be our own craft, right? So the way that we are giving feedback and receiving the feedback has a lot of impact in the culture of our team, on how we think about continuously improving and learning, how we think about shipping software fast, how we think about the client. And then the other thing that code reviews had a great impact in is speed. So our ability as a team to ship code fast to production, right? So yeah, in this short talk, I'm going to talk about how code reviews are affecting all these three different things in the teams that I analyze, well, our team analyze, and how they are working and what are the most important bottlenecks and pain points in this process and how we can improve them. So the first thing, speed. So, you know, when we analyze all of our clients that are using Pulpo, you know, the code review process, if we are taking into account from a reviewer is assigned, well, from the point where we create a pull request until that code is in production, is more than 50% of the time, of the total cycle time of a task. So what that typically looks like is something like this. We create a pull request and then we wait. If it's not automated, we wait until someone picks that pull request up to review it. Then we wait again until that person does the first comments. Then we wait again until we read the comments and do the code changes or reply. And that happens like n iterations of that, right? So it can be a big pain there. And then we wait again until it gets approved. Then we wait again until it gets merged. And then it's not here, but we wait again if we don't have continuous deployment until it gets deployed. And finally, the user is able to see those changes in production, right? So we have a lot of waits there. The thing is, so first of all, can we like completely get rid of all those waits or those blocking times? So let's see. One alternative that we can do is pair programming. So in pair programming, we absolutely remove all those waits because we are creating the code while we are reviewing the code. So all those waits completely disappear. However, what we've seen is that pair programming is not for all the types of tasks for all the people all the time. So it's super useful to test in which situations and with what type of people is useful for you to pair programming and to know yourself and identify those opportunities to pair programming and completely get rid of those waits. Sometimes it also depends on the company. Sometimes they don't allow pair programming in some places. So another alternative that we can do is this framework called Ship Show Us that is not very known, but I really like it. So what this framework says is, well, it's published in the Martin Fowler site, but what it says is, do we actually need a review for this change? So if we are doing like a super small change that maybe is fixing a typo or something like that, so this framework gives the ownership to the developer to completely deploy this change to production. Just commit without pull request, commit to main and deploy it to production. So if no one is going to learn about this change and it's a very small one without risk, maybe we can do that. For other type of changes where, you know, it's also super small without much risks, but we want to show this change to our teammates, we can do a show pull request, which is basically creating a pull request, merging it, and then show the changes to the other people or to the team. So the changes are in production, there's no wait, but we can still show the changes. And then we have the ask type of pull request, which is what we typically know as pull requests, conventional pull requests. Here we again have all those waits. Okay, so if we cannot completely delete the waits, how can we reduce those waits? How can we make these waits smaller? So let's start for the pickup time, which is the time that we are waiting for a reviewer to be assigned to that pull request. Maybe some of you have it already automatically, but I've seen many times where people, what they do is create a pull request, copy the link in GitHub, and send it to a Slack channel and say, hey, someone can review it. So if you're doing that, I encourage you to change it, because this way shouldn't exist. And there are different ways of doing that. For example, probably some of you already know you can create a code owners file in GitHub, right? So here I have a GitHub repo. I can create a code owners file. And what I can do is here say, okay, all the JavaScript files will be reviewed by this GitHub team, which is called backend. But can you see it? Yeah. So let's commit these changes here, commit to the main branch. And then what we can also do is go to this team backend. So where is this team? Here, backend. Go to, okay, this is the team, which is super big, just one member. We're a small company. But something that's very useful to do is to do this, enable auto-assignment. So what this is, you get all your team here, you can enable auto-assignment, and GitHub will have the authority to automatically assign the reviewer to that pull request. And it gave us two algorithms for doing that. The first one is a load balancing algorithm. Basically, it looks which person has the less review and try to balance the amount of work of amount of reviews. And then a round robin algorithm, which is basically first this person, then this person, then this person, So there's this thing to do the automatically get rid of the code of the pickup time. So now if we go to the repo, let's go to a JavaScript file. Let's change something. Create a pull request. Sorry. Super quick. Now I create a pull request here in GitHub. It also automatically adds the backend team. Create a pull request, and now it will assign a reviewer, hopefully the person on the team. Maybe if I read. Yeah, you see it now. So we already get rid of the pickup time, right? There are other ways. There are other tools with more complex assignment algorithms that can take into account knowledge islands or workloads of vacations, so that can also be useful. Now let's go to the code review time. We already assigned a reviewer. Now we are getting into the code review itself. And we have many different ways here, right? So we can do a lot of things here. There are AI summaries. If we take a look at this pull request here, you can see it created a summary. Well, this pull request was super small, but it creates a summary on the changes of the pull request, and it's easier for the reviewer to get faster into the context of the pull request. There are also AI assistants which can actually recommend, do actually the first review and recommend code changes. There are linters, quality gates, there are testing. There are many things that we can do, but the most important thing to do is to, well, there are this, sorry, there is this preview environment that I want to show it. Do you use preview environments? Is anyone using preview environments? Not really? Somehow? Nice, we have some people here using preview environments. I really recommend doing this preview. It's great. When you start using preview environments, you don't want to get back, especially for front-end teams. I really like, for example, the ones that Berthel has, where you can actually do the comments in the preview environments. So this allows to other stakeholders, even product teams or UX teams, to actually do the comments in the lab. They don't need to know even about code, so they can do the comments, and we can involve other people in the process too. So we can do many different things, and there are many different cool tools. But the most important thing is to reply fast to the code review messages, to actually reply to our teammates and to unblock the code review. What I've seen many times is that reviewers, sometimes they don't even know that some people reply to the code review message, or they are not even aware on which pull request they are involved. And what many things we end up doing is go to Slack and say, hey, can you please review my pull request, please? Or we go to Slack channels where there are people not involved and say, please, can someone review my pull request? And well, that's what happened to me, at least in this company that I worked in Bust. So what I did for this company is to do a small tool. So you see here we created this pull request, right? So what I did for this company is that every time you create a pull request in GitHub, you have the ability to create a Slack channel associated to that pull request. And it's associated like both ways, right? So here we can see the AI analysis that I did before, the results of the workflows. And the thing is that if you do a code review comment here in GitHub, it will go back to Slack with the context of the code. If I reply in Slack, it will go back to GitHub. If I can approve the pull request from Slack and that. So the thing is that now people is aware of that someone replied to their code review comments, and they can reply to the comments directly in Slack, and the conversation and those waiting times are much smaller. Okay, so yeah, there's only one more rule about code reviews and replying to code review messages, is that code reviews shouldn't break your flow. So flow is, if you are super focused on a task and you're in flow state, you should keep yourself there and don't change context too much. So you are more productive if you are super focused. Stop. And when you stop working on that task, then you can change and unblock your teammates. That's a good recommendation. So yeah, that's well. And one note on speed, one more note, is that once the pull request is approved, it should get merged automatically. No need to wait there. And once it's approved, it should also go to production automatically. So no need absolutely to wait in those phases. So we've talked about speed. And that's the first thing code reviews have a lot of impact in. Now we can talk about culture. So I'm going to talk less here, but most of the time code reviews happen in a written format, right? In a written format, our voice tone is not there, and our corporal movements, our face expression is not there, and that communicates a lot, right? It's not only words. The thing is that if our feedback is given in a written format, in code reviews, in GitHub, misunderstandings happen a lot more, are much more common, right? And that can be a problem, like in time, in problems in the team. So one solution to solve this is Again, pair programming can work because in pair programming, our voice is there and it communicates a lot. And when pair programming is not possible, there are other tools that can be super helpful. One of them is conventional comments. So maybe you know conventional commits for commit messages. And conventional comments applies the same concept to code review messages. So basically what we do is so here is the landing page of conventional comments. What we do is, this comments like this are not very helpful, not helpful at all. So what we do is add what our comment is actually meaning, right? So we say this is a suggestion and it's non-blocking, so we can merge the pull request, and this comment is not blocking the merge, right? There are other things that we can do to do better comments, like actually propose a solution for that, and these are the labels. So and this is 2 days ago, I also started doing this small tool where you can here have these conventional comments in GitHub. So you can actually so it's easier for you to say, hey, this is a suggestion and it's non-blocking, and you can write your comment here and then do the comment. Okay, that's about culture. We've talked about the speed, we've talked about culture. I don't know how much time I've been speaking, but let's talk a little bit about quality. So what do you think about quality? What do you think quality means in software? So do you have any ideas? Or
readability, for example.
Readability, right? We have readability. It's super important for our software to be readable, right? For other teammates to work in the same code base, right? Any more ideas on what quality means?
Usability.
Usability.
Reusability.
Reusability. Okay.
Beautiful architecture.
Beautiful architecture. Okay. Testing. Reliability. Right. All those are correct. Any more ideas?
Performance.
Sorry?
Performance.
Performance. Any more ideas?
Easily extensible.
Easily extensible, okay. So all of those are correct, but there is a framework that I love for defining software quality, which is called the Truth framework. It's also made for, maybe the space framework for software productivity. The Truth framework is from the same authors, but for defining software quality. I really like this framework because it takes into account what you guys said: readability, performance, testing, but it also takes into account 2 more dimensions, which are the first 2 ones. Speed, like, are we shipping the software to production when the client needs it? Are we shipping it fast at the pace that the company needs it? And this is not the same, of course, for a startup that needs to ship super fast and validate ideas than an enterprise company that needs something very robust and that's performant or that needs to scale, right? And then we have user needs for also defining quality. So this answers to the question, is our software solving the problem that the user has? Is our, satisfying the user needs? So these are 2 dimensions that I really like to take also into account, and that we also should take into account when looking in code reviews, right? In our code review comments. So, and then we have all the things that we said before. So our code it has testing, it scales, it's readable by others, has documented code, it can be evolvable, reusability. So yeah, that's two things that we should, I believe, I don't know what you think, but I believe that we should also take into account as developers. So yeah, at the beginning of the talk, I asked this question, how this company that I was working on, even though we had a great team, but we were not shipping consistently good code fast. So code reviews happened to have a lot to do with that, because it has a lot of impact in culture, and culture helps us doing things consistently and for a long period. The team, is healthy. We are looking to improve every time. It helps to build culture. It helps a lot in speed, so it helps us ship fast, and it helps a lot in quality. And quality helps in both three dimensions, as we saw just before. It's for speed, for good code, which means it satisfies user needs, is evolvable, reusable, and it also helps in doing things consistently for a long period. Like, we are not creating a spaghetti code all the time. So I hope you like the talk. I'm Marco, co-founder of Pulpo. You can reach out to me via email or in Twitter or in LinkedIn, and I will love to connect with you guys. So I don't know what time it is, but okay, I'll be like in there drinking some beers, but then I will have to leave. But I would love to chat with all of you. So if you have any questions, by the way, feel free to ask. Thanks.